I returned from the dead to find my son washing dishes in a commercial kitchen I didn't recognize, wearing clothes too thin for the San Francisco winter. He looked at me through the serving window with exhausted eyes and asked what I wanted to order. He didn't know that the man standing in line at this catering company was not a customer, but his father, armed with $100 million and a decade of rage waiting to be unleashed. Before I destroy the people who did this to him, let me tell you how we got here. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 62 years old. For the past 12 years, the world believed I died in a factory explosion in Shenzhen, China. The insurance companies paid out. The obituaries ran. My business partner Richard Kane gave a tearful eulogy at my memorial service, promising to take care of my family. He kept that promise in the worst possible way. I didn't die in that explosion. I was imprisoned by corrupt officials who wanted my manufacturing patents. I spent 4 years in a Chinese detention facility fighting extradition charges that were completely fabricated. When I finally got out, it took me another 8 years to rebuild my fortune in Southeast Asia, operating under a different name, unable to contact home because Richard had convinced everyone I was dead, and Chinese authorities would arrest me if I surfaced. The night I returned to San Francisco, the fog was rolling in thick over the Golden Gate. I stood outside the address I'd found for my son Daniel. It wasn't the $15 million Pacific Heights mansion I'd bought him when he was 25. It was a cramped studio apartment in the Tenderloin, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the city. The building smelled of mildew and desperation. I had changed my appearance. The Chinese prison had aged me brutally. I'd lost 40 pounds. My hair had gone completely white. I wore colored contacts and glasses. I'd grown a beard. Even if Daniel looked directly at me, he wouldn't see his father. He would see a stranger. I didn't go to his apartment. Instead, I followed the address on the second piece of paper my investigator had given me. Kane Catering Services, located in an industrial area south of Market Street. The business license showed Richard Kane as the owner. My son Daniel was listed as an employee in a catering company. My son, who held an MBA from Stanford, who had been groomed to take over my tech firm, was working in a commercial kitchen. I walked into the storefront at 6 p.m. The place was busy, preparing for some corporate event. Through the serving window, I could see the kitchen. That's when I saw him. Daniel had been a vibrant 20-year-old when I left. Athletic, always smiling, full of dreams about the company we'd build together. The man I saw now was a ghost. He'd aged 20 years in 12. His face was gaunt. His hands moved with the mechanical precision of someone who'd done the same task 10,000 times. He was plating appetizers, his movements careful, afraid to make a mistake. A woman's voice cut through the kitchen noise like a whip. "Daniel, those crab cakes are uneven. Do them again. All of them." I watched my son's shoulders slump. He didn't argue. He just scraped 50 perfectly good crab cakes into the trash and started over. The woman who'd given the order emerged from the back office, Victoria Kane. I recognized her from the photos my investigator had compiled. Richard's wife. She was wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly rent. She walked through the kitchen like a queen inspecting her subjects. "And when you're done with those," she said, not even looking at Daniel, "the grease traps need cleaning. Brett mentioned they're disgusting." "Yes, Mrs. Kane," Daniel said. His voice was barely audible. I forced myself to remain calm. I ordered a coffee from the front counter, paid, and sat where I could watch. I needed to see more. I needed to understand the full scope of what they'd done to my son. An hour later, a young man walked in. Late 20s, wearing a tech company hoodie that probably cost $200, carrying himself with the arrogance of someone who'd never been told no. Brett Kane, Richard and Victoria's son. He didn't go to the office. He went straight to the kitchen. "Daniel," he shouted, "where's my dinner? I texted you an hour ago." Through the window, I saw Daniel wince. "I'm sorry, Brett. We've been swamped with the Harrison event. I can make you something now." "I don't want it now. I wanted it an hour ago." Brett walked closer. "You know what? Forget it. Just give me cash. I'm going out." I don't have cash right now," Daniel said quietly. "Payday isn't until Friday." "Then go to the ATM." Brett, please. Sophie needs her insulin refills. The prescription costs $400, and I only have $380 in my account right now. If I give you money? Brett's laugh was cruel. Sophie's fine. She's not going to die before Friday. Give me $200. Now. I watched my son's hands shake as he took off his apron. He walked to the small office, came back with his wallet, and handed Brett cash. My grandson's medication money for this spoiled brat's dinner. Brett counted the bills, sneered, and walked out without a thank you. I sat there, gripping my coffee cup so hard I thought it would shatter. Sophie, my granddaughter. I hadn't even known Daniel had a child. My investigator's report had mentioned her. Sophie Park Chen, age 11, type 1 diabetic. Her other father, David Park, had been killed in Afghanistan 6 years ago while serving as an army medic. My son was a widower, raising a diabetic child alone, working as kitchen staff for the people who'd stolen everything from him. I wanted to walk into that kitchen and tell him who I was. I wanted to hand him my American Express black card and tell him his nightmare was over. But I couldn't, not yet, because I needed to know the full truth. I needed to understand exactly what Richard Kane had done. I finished my coffee and left. Outside, I made a phone call. Hartman, I said when my attorney answered, I need you to set up a full surveillance operation. Audio, video, financial records. I need to know everything about Richard Kane, his family, and what they did to my company. Marcus, Hartman said carefully, you could just go to the police. File charges. The evidence we already have is not enough, I interrupted. I need them to confess. I need them to hang themselves with their own rope. Because when I'm done, I don't want them in jail for 5 years. I want them in jail for 50. Understood. What's your cover identity? Robert Chang, technology consultant. I'm going to apply for a job at Kane Technologies. There was a pause. You're going to work for the man who stole your company? No, I said, looking back at the catering storefront where my son was still working. I'm going to work for my son, and then I'm going to take everything back. The next morning, I walked into the headquarters of Kane Technologies. The building was in Soma, all glass and steel, with my company's logo twisted into something I barely recognized. They'd changed the name from Chen Kane Innovations to just Kane Technologies. My name had been erased. I was dressed in business casual, carrying a leather portfolio. I'd applied online 3 days ago for a senior technology consultant position, using my fake identity and a resume that was impressive enough to get attention, but not so impressive it would trigger background checks that might reveal who I really was. The receptionist directed me to the 5th floor. The interview was with Richard Kane himself. I hadn't seen Richard in 12 years. We'd been best friends once, partners who'd built a company from nothing in a garage in Palo Alto. I'd been the technical genius. He'd been the business mind. We'd taken the company public, made millions, and I'd trusted him enough to make him co-CEO when I left for China. The man who walked into the conference room was bloated with success. Richard had gained 50 pounds, all of it in his gut. He wore a custom suit that cost at least $10,000, and a Rolex that cost even more. His face had the ruddy look of someone who drank expensive scotch every night. He didn't recognize me. Why would he? Marcus Chen had been dead for 12 years. Mr. Chang, Richard said, extending his hand. Thanks for coming in. Your resume is impressive. 10 years in Asian markets, expertise in AI and machine learning, Mandarin fluent. We could use someone with your background. I shook his hand. The man who'd stolen my life was smiling at me like we were old friends meeting for the first time. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Kane, I said. My voice was different now, my accent slightly altered. I've followed Kane Technologies for years. You've built something impressive. Richard preened. We've had our challenges, but yes, the company has thrived. My late partner, Marcus Chen, laid a good foundation before his tragic death. I've just built on his vision, built on my vision. The audacity was breathtaking. I read about the accident in China, I said carefully. That must have been difficult. Richard's face arranged itself into an expression of practiced sorrow. Marcus was like a brother to me. His death devastated us all, especially his son, Daniel. The poor kid never recovered. His son works for you? In a manner of speaking. Richard's tone shifted, becoming dismissive. Daniel has limitations, mental health issues, poor work ethic. I gave him a job at our catering subsidiary, out of loyalty to Marcus. It's charity, really. The kid would be homeless otherwise. I felt my jaw clench. I forced it to relax. That's generous of you, I said. Family takes care of family, Richard said piously. Then he leaned forward. Now, let's talk about what you can do for us. We're looking to expand into Asian markets. Your connections could be valuable. The interview lasted an hour. Richard liked to talk about himself. He bragged about the company's valuation, about the contracts he'd secured, about the new yacht he was buying. He never once mentioned that half of those innovations had come from my patents, my designs, my years of work. At the end, he offered me the job. $200,000 a year, starting immediately. There's one condition, Richard said. We're having a major investor dinner this Friday night. Black tie event at my home in Pacific Heights. I need you there. It'll be a good chance to meet the team and some of our key partners. Your home? I asked. Yes, it's quite something. $15 million mansion. Used to belong to Marcus, actually. When he died, I purchased it from his estate to keep it in the company family. Seemed fitting. My estate, my home, the house I'd bought for Daniel. I'd be honored, I said. Richard smiled. Excellent. Oh, and the catering will be handled by our subsidiary. You'll get to meet Daniel. Poor kid, but he makes decent appetizers. I walked out of that building with a job offer and a rage so pure it felt like ice in my veins. Richard hadn't just stolen my company. He'd stolen my house. He'd turned my son into his servant, and he was going to parade Daniel in front of investors like some kind of trained pet. I got into my rental car and drove to Hartman's office in the financial district. Did you get the surveillance set up? I asked. Hartman nodded, turning his computer screen toward me. 3 bugs in the house. 1 in Richard's home office, 1 in the master bedroom, 1 in the kitchen, and I pulled the financial records like you asked. He slid a folder across the desk. I opened it. Inside were bank statements, property records, corporate filings. The story they told made me sick. When I died, my shares in the company had gone to Daniel, as specified in my will. Daniel had been 20 years old, grieving, vulnerable. Richard had been named temporary guardian of the shares until Daniel turned 25. Except Daniel had never gotten those shares. According to the documents, there was a debt. A massive debt that I'd allegedly left behind. Business loans totaling $8 million, co-signed by Richard. When I died, Richard claimed the debt became his responsibility. He'd petitioned the court to transfer Daniel's shares to himself as compensation. The debt is fake, I said, looking at Hartman. Completely fabricated, Hartman confirmed. I traced the loan documents. The signatures are forged. The banks listed don't even exist anymore. But the court accepted them because Richard had a probate lawyer in his pocket. I flipped to the next section. Property records. The mansion in Pacific Heights. The beach house in Malibu. The investment properties in Seattle and Austin. All of them had been in a trust for Daniel. All of them had been transferred to Richard Kane, using the same fake debt as justification. And the catering business? I asked. Hartman pulled up another file. Kane Catering Services. Richard told Daniel that he needed to work off the debt his father left behind. Minimum wage, no benefits. Daniel's been working there for 11 years. 11 years. My son had been enslaved for 11 years. What about Sophie? I asked. Daniel's daughter. Hartman's face darkened. That's the truly evil part. David Park, Daniel's husband, was killed in Afghanistan in 2018. Military death benefits should have paid out $400,000 life insurance, plus ongoing survivor benefits. Should have? Richard told Daniel the money had to go toward the debt. He's been intercepting the checks for 6 years. Daniel never saw a penny. He doesn't even know the benefits exist. I stood up and walked to the window. Below, San Francisco spread out in the afternoon sun. Beautiful and oblivious. Sophie is diabetic, I said quietly. Yes. Type 1. She needs insulin, continuous glucose monitoring, regular endocrinology appointments. It costs about $1,500 a month, even with insurance. Richard provides the insurance through the catering company, but he makes Daniel pay a $1,200 monthly premium out of his wages. Daniel makes $2,400 a month. After the insurance premium and rent, he has about $800 for everything else. So Richard is effectively stealing from a dead soldier and using a sick child as leverage. Yes, I turned back to Hartman. Start recording everything. I want audio of every conversation in that house. Video if possible. I want to catch them red-handed. Marcus, this is enough to go to the police right now. It's not enough, I said, because they'll claim it was all a mistake. They'll say the debt was real and they were just managing the estate. They'll have expensive lawyers who'll drag it out for years. And while that's happening, Daniel will still be working in that kitchen, and Sophie will still be at risk. I sat back down. No, I need them to confess on tape. I need them to threaten Daniel. I need them to be so arrogant, so confident in their power, that they say the quiet part out loud. And then I'm going to hand that recording to the FBI, the SEC, and every news organization in California. Hartman nodded slowly. What do you need from me? I need you to create a shell company. Make it look like a wealthy foreign investor interested in acquiring Kane Technologies. Have them make an offer. $200 million, all cash. Immediate closing. Make it too good to refuse. And make it contingent on a few things. Clean title to all properties. No outstanding liens or claims. That means Richard will need to get Daniel to sign away any potential rights to the company or the properties. He'll force Daniel to sign. Exactly. And when he does, when he threatens that little girl to get her father to sign away his inheritance, we'll have him on tape for extortion, fraud, and a dozen other charges. I pulled out my phone and showed Hartman a photo I'd taken outside the catering company. Daniel, looking exhausted, taking out the trash. That's my son, I said. He thinks his father was a failure, who left him with nothing but debt. He thinks he's worthless. He's been beaten down so badly, he doesn't even fight back anymore. I put the phone away. I'm going to that dinner on Friday. I'm going to watch Richard parade my son around like a servant, and I'm going to smile and play my role. Because the trap is almost set. And when it springs, I said, Richard Kane is going to learn what it feels like to lose everything. Friday night arrived with typical San Francisco weather, cold and foggy. I drove to Pacific Heights in a rented Tesla, wearing a tuxedo I'd bought that afternoon. The mansion looked exactly as I remembered it. A classic Victorian painted lady with bay windows and a view of the Golden Gate Bridge. I'd bought this house in 2010, right after Daniel came out to me and introduced me to David. I'd wanted them to have a place where they could build a life together, where they could start a family. I'd furnished it with antiques, filled it with art, and put it in a trust so Daniel would always have a home. Now, Richard Kane was using it as his personal palace. I walked up the steps. A uniformed valet took my keys. Inside, the foyer was filled with tech industry executives and investors, all holding champagne glasses and talking in the performative way wealthy people do at these events. Richard spotted me immediately. "Robert! Glad you could make it." He grabbed my arm, pulling me into the crowd. "Everyone, this is Robert Chang, our new senior consultant. He's going to help us crack the Asian markets." I shook hands, made small talk, and scanned the room. Victoria Kane was holding court by the fireplace, dripping in diamonds that probably came from my son's stolen inheritance. Brett was at the bar, already drunk, laughing too loud at his own jokes. And then I saw Daniel. He was in the kitchen, visible through a service door that kept swinging open. He wore a white chef's coat that was too big for him, and a black apron. He was arranging canapes on silver trays with the same careful precision I'd seen at the catering company. Another server, a young woman, took the tray and brought it into the main room. The guests took appetizers without even looking at her. "The catering is from our subsidiary company," Richard was saying to a group of investors. "We keep it in-house, saves money and supports our extended family." "Extended family?" one of the investors asked. My late partner's son works there. Daniel. Nice kid, not the sharpest, but he tries hard. We take care of our own. I watched Richard accept praise for his generosity, all while my son was hidden in the kitchen like something shameful. Dinner was served in the formal dining room. I was seated near Richard, close enough to be part of the important conversations, but far enough that I was clearly still being tested. Throughout the meal, I watched the service door. Daniel appeared occasionally, bringing dishes, refilling water glasses. No one acknowledged him. He was invisible. Then I heard Victoria's voice, sharp and angry, coming from the kitchen. Daniel, this risotto is too salty. How many times do I have to tell you to taste as you cook? The dining room went quiet. Everyone heard her. I'm sorry, Mrs. Kane. Daniel's voice filtered through. I'll make a new batch. Don't bother. Just serve it. These people won't know the difference. One of the investors made an awkward joke. Conversation resumed. But I saw the looks that passed between some of the guests. Discomfort, embarrassment. But no one said anything. After dinner, while people mingled and digested, I excused myself to find the bathroom. Instead, I slipped through the service door into the kitchen. Daniel was alone, scrubbing a huge stock pot, his hands red and raw from hot water. He looked up when I entered. Sorry, sir. Guests aren't supposed to be in here. I just wanted to compliment the food, I said. It took everything I had to keep my voice steady, to not reveal who I was. You're very talented. Daniel looked surprised. Oh, thank you. That's kind of you to say. Up close, I could see how thin he was. His chef's coat hung on him like a scarecrow's costume. There were circles under his eyes that spoke of chronic exhaustion. You're Daniel, right? Richard mentioned you. Yeah, he didn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry if the service wasn't. The service was perfect, I interrupted. How long have you been doing this? Catering? About 11 years. That's a long time. You must enjoy it. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It's a job. It pays the bills. Mostly. Mostly? He shook his head. Sorry. I shouldn't. I need to finish cleaning up. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to grab his shoulders and say, Daniel, it's me. It's your father. I'm alive, and I'm going to fix everything. But I couldn't. Because he wouldn't believe me. Or worse, he'd react, and Richard would notice, and the whole plan would collapse. Instead, I said, I hope things get better for you. He looked at me then, really looked at me. And for a moment I thought he saw something familiar. But then he just nodded. Thank you. That's nice of you to say. I left the kitchen before I broke down. The rest of the evening was torture. I made conversation, discussed market strategies, pretended to be impressed by Richard's vision for the company. All while my son cleaned up in the kitchen, and Richard's guests praised him for his charitable heart. At midnight, the party finally ended. I was one of the last to leave. Richard walked me to the door, slightly drunk, expansive with success. You'll fit in well here, Robert, he said, clapping my shoulder. We're building something special, something that will outlast all of us. I'm sure it will, I said. I drove back to my hotel and sat in the dark for an hour, listening to the audio feed from the bugs Hartman had planted. I heard Victoria complaining about Daniel's cooking. I heard Brett laughing about making Daniel give him money. I heard Richard on the phone with his lawyer, discussing how to structure the sale of the company to maximize his payout. But I didn't hear what I needed. I didn't hear them confess to the fraud. I needed more. The next morning, Hartman called. The offer went through. The shell company sent a formal letter of intent to Richard's lawyer, $200 million for Kane Technologies and all subsidiary companies. The lawyer called Richard an hour ago. He's very excited. What about the contingencies? Clean title, as you specified. Richard's lawyer pointed out that there could be a potential claim from Daniel, since technically he was Marcus Chen's heir. Richard said it wouldn't be a problem, that he'd get Daniel to sign a release. When? They're meeting today. Richard asked Daniel to come to the house this afternoon. The lawyer will be there with paperwork. This was it. This was the moment. Are the recording devices working? Perfectly. Video and audio. Everything is being backed up to secure cloud storage in real time. Good. I'm going there. Marcus, you can't risk. I'm not going inside, but I need to be close. I need to hear this happen. I parked 2 blocks away from the mansion, in a spot where I could see the front door. Hartman had given me access to the audio feed on my phone. I put in earbuds and waited. At 2 p.m., Daniel arrived. He was on foot, couldn't afford a car. He walked up the steps and knocked. Victoria answered. "You're late," she said. No hello, no greeting. I had to take the bus. There was an accident on Van Ness. I don't want excuses. Richard is in his office. I heard footsteps, a door closing, then Richard's voice, friendly and warm. "Daniel, thanks for coming. Sit down, sit down. Mrs. Kane said you needed to see me urgently. Is something wrong?" "Wrong? No. Everything is very right. We have amazing news. The company is being acquired. A major investor wants to buy us out for $200 million. That's great, Mr. Kane. Congratulations." "Thank you. Now, there's just a small formality we need to handle. Our lawyer, Mr. Pearson, is here." A third voice. "Daniel, this is just a standard release form. When your father died, there were some complicated estate issues. This document confirms that you have no claim to Kane Technologies or any of its assets." "I don't understand," I thought. "I thought all that was settled years ago. The debt." "It was settled," Richard said smoothly. "This is just the buyer being extra cautious. They want clean paperwork. It's a formality. You sign this, and it confirms what we already know, that you have no ownership stake in the company." "But my father—" "Your father left you with debt, Daniel." Richard's voice hardened slightly. "Remember? $8 million that I had to cover. This company survived because of my work, my vision. Your father's contribution was years ago. This is my company now." Silence. Then, "Okay, where do I sign?" "Right here, and here, and initial here." I heard the scratch of a pen. My son was signing away his inheritance, and he didn't even hesitate because he truly believed he had nothing to inherit. "Perfect," Richard said. "Now, there's one more thing. The mansion." "The mansion?" "This house. It's technically part of the deal. The buyers want all real estate assets included. But again, there's a potential complication. The house was originally purchased by your father, so we need you to sign a quitclaim deed, formally releasing any interest in the property." "I don't have any interest. You own the house." "I do. But legally, since it was your father's purchase, we need your signature to confirm you're not making any claims." Another pause. "I would never claim your house, Mr. Kane." "I know that, Daniel. But lawyers, you know how they are. Just sign here." More scratching of pen on paper. "Excellent. Now, one last document. This is a release of all claims related to your father's estate. It basically says that everything has been settled, all debts paid, and you have no further claims against me or the company. Mr. Kane, I signed a bunch of these years ago. This is a new one. The buyers are very thorough." "Okay," he signed. I listened to him sign away everything, trusting the man who'd stolen it all. "Perfect," Richard said. "You're free to go. Oh, and Daniel?" "Yes?" "We're going to need extra staff next weekend. Big event. Can you work a double shift?" "Sophie has a doctor's appointment, so reschedule it." The appointment took 3 months to get. Her insulin levels have been off. Richard's voice went cold. "Daniel, do I need to remind you of everything I've done for you? The job, the insurance, the patience I've shown while you've worked off your father's debts?" "No, sir." "Then be here next weekend. Both days. Understood?" "Understood." I heard Daniel leave. Through my windshield, I watched him walk down the steps, his shoulders slumped, defeated. But I had what I needed. I had Richard on tape acknowledging the debt was the justification for taking the company. I had him forcing Daniel to sign under false pretenses. I had him using Sophie's healthcare as leverage. I called Hartman. "We have it. Everything." I heard. "Marcus, this is wire fraud, extortion, forgery, and that's just the civil side. Start putting together the criminal complaint. I want fraud, embezzlement, theft from a military family. Get the FBI involved. Get the IRS involved. I want every federal agency that has jurisdiction." "What about you?" I have one more performance to give. Monday morning, I walked into Kane Technologies in my role as Robert Chang. I worked normally, attended meetings, reviewed code. I was professional and competent. Richard praised me to other employees, talking about what a great hire I was. Wednesday afternoon, Richard called me into his office. "Robert, I need to tell you something confidentially. We're being acquired. The announcement will be public next week, but I wanted you to know now. You're going to be a key part of the transition." "Congratulations," I said. "Thank you. It's been a long journey. My partner Marcus would have been proud." I doubted that. "There's going to be a closing ceremony," Richard continued. "Friday afternoon. The buyers, their lawyers, our board. It'll be at the mansion. I'd like you there. I'd be honored." Friday. The same day Hartman was coordinating with federal authorities. The same day the FBI would be executing warrants. "I'll be there," I said. Richard smiled. "Excellent. Oh, and dress well. We're celebrating after. Champagne, the works. I wouldn't miss it." Friday morning, I met with Hartman and a FBI agent named Sarah Martinez. She was mid-40s, sharp-eyed, and had made her career prosecuting white-collar crime. "Mr. Chen," she said, "I've reviewed all the evidence, the recordings, the financial documents, the forged paperwork. This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've seen. When will you move? We'll wait until the closing ceremony. That way, Richard Kane, his wife, and his son will all be in one place. We'll have teams positioned around the mansion. When you give the signal, we'll execute the warrants simultaneously." "What's my signal?" She handed me a phone. "When you're ready, send a text to this number. Just one word. Now." I took the phone. "Mr. Chen," Agent Martinez said, "I need to ask, why wait until now? You could have come to us months ago." "Because I needed him to feel safe," I said. "I needed him to think he'd won completely. I needed him arrogant and careless. And I needed my son to see the truth with his own eyes." "Your son doesn't know you're alive?" "No. He thinks his father was a failure who abandoned him with debt. That's what Richard told him. That's what he's believed for 12 years. That's going to be quite a reunion." I looked at the photo of Daniel I kept in my wallet, the old one, from before I'd left. He was smiling, his arm around David, both of them young and happy, and full of hope for the future. "Yes," I said, "it is." The closing ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m. I arrived at the mansion at 2:45, wearing my best suit, carrying the phone Agent Martinez had given me. The house was full of people. Richard's lawyer, the board of directors, representatives from the shell company Hartman had created. Everyone was smiling, anticipating the big payday. Richard was in his element, playing the gracious host. Victoria was there too, dripping in jewelry. Brett stood by the bar, already drinking. And in the kitchen, I could see Daniel, preparing canapes for the celebration he wasn't invited to. At 3 p.m., Richard called everyone into the dining room. Documents were spread across the table, ready to be signed. "Before we begin," Richard said, "I want to say a few words. This company started as a dream between me and my late partner, Marcus Chen. Marcus was brilliant, but tragically, he died before he could see what we built. I've carried on his legacy, and I know he'd be proud of what Kane Technologies has become." I stood in the back of the room, watching this man rewrite history. "The sale price is $200 million. After legal fees and distribution to shareholders, my family will net approximately $180 million. It's a testament to hard work, vision, and theft," I said. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me. "Excuse me?" Richard said. I walked forward, into the center of the room. I said, "Theft. You're about to sell a company you don't own, property you don't own, assets you stole." Richard's face reddened. "Robert, what the hell are you talking about?" "My name isn't Robert Chang," I said. I took off my glasses. I removed the colored contacts. "My name is Marcus Chen, and I'm not dead." You could hear a pin drop. Richard's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, recognition, and finally, fear. "That's impossible," he whispered. "You died. I saw the reports. The Chinese government imprisoned me for 4 years, but I didn't die. I survived. And when I got out, I spent 8 years building a new fortune so I could come back and take what's mine. Victoria made a small sound. Brett dropped his glass. It shattered on the hardwood floor. This is insane, Richard said, trying to recover. This man is clearly delusional. Security. There's no security coming, Richard, I said. Just FBI agents. They're surrounding the house right now. I pulled out the phone and sent the text. Now, within 30 seconds, the front door burst open. Agent Martinez led a team of federal agents in, all wearing tactical gear. Richard Kane, she said, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, forging government documents, theft from a military family, and about a dozen other charges. You have the right to remain silent. Richard started backing away. No, this is a mistake. I didn't. We have recordings, I said. Every conversation, every threat, every lie you told my son. 2 more agents were bringing in Victoria and Brett. Victoria was screaming something about lawyers. Brett was crying. The board members and lawyers were being questioned. The room was chaos. I walked past all of it, through the service door, into the kitchen. Daniel was there, pressed against the far wall, his eyes huge with shock. Dad, he whispered, you're alive? I couldn't speak. I just nodded. But they said you died. They said you left debts. They lied about everything, Daniel, I managed. Every word was a lie. He slid down the wall, sitting on the floor, his hands over his face. He was shaking. I knelt beside him. I'm sorry, I said. I'm so sorry I couldn't come back sooner. I tried. God, I tried. The debt? He asked. Never existed. The company shares? They were always yours. This house? Yours. Richard forged documents, bribed officials. He stole everything and made you think you had nothing. Daniel was crying now. 12 years of grief and exhaustion pouring out. And David's death benefits? He asked. Richard stole those too. All $400,000. Plus the ongoing survivor benefits. You should have been receiving $2,000 a month for Sophie. Richard intercepted every check. Sophie, Daniel gasped. Her insulin is going to be covered for the rest of her life, I said. I've set up a trust. The best doctors, the best care. She's going to be okay. I helped him stand. Daniel, listen to me. You need to hear this. You are not worthless. You were never worthless. You're my son, and I'm so proud of you. You survived. You protected Sophie. You held on. I thought you abandoned us, he sobbed. I thought you ran away. Never. I fought every single day to get back to you. Through the doorway, I could see Richard being led out in handcuffs. He looked back once, saw me holding my son, and the expression on his face was pure hatred. Agent Martinez approached. Mr. Chen, we'll need statements from both of you. Later, I said. Right now, I need to take my son to see his daughter. She should know her grandfather is alive. We left the mansion together, Daniel leaning on me like he might collapse. Outside, media trucks were already arriving, drawn by the drama of federal agents arresting a prominent tech CEO. I didn't care about any of it. I only cared about the man beside me, who was finally free. We picked up Sophie from her after-school program. She was a beautiful girl, with David's eyes and Daniel's smile. When Daniel told her who I was, she stared at me for a long moment. Grandpa? She said. But Daddy said you were dead. I was lost, I told her. But I found my way home. She hugged me, and I felt something break and heal at the same time. That evening, the 3 of us had dinner at a restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy, just burgers and fries. Sophie told me about school, about her friends, about her insulin pump. Daniel was quiet, still processing everything. Later, after we'd taken Sophie back to their tiny apartment, Daniel and I sat in my hotel room. What happens now? He asked. Now? I pulled out a folder Hartman had prepared. Now you get everything back. The company is yours. The house is yours. Richard will spend the next 20 to 30 years in federal prison. Victoria and Brett are facing charges too. Everything they took will be returned, plus damages. I don't know how to run a tech company. You'll learn. Or you'll sell it. Or you'll hire someone to run it for you. It doesn't matter. The point is, it's yours. Your choice. He looked at the documents, then at me. Why did you wait? You've been back for weeks. You could have told me right away. Because I needed proof, I said. If I'd just walked in and said I was alive, Richard would have found a way to spin it. He'd have claimed the debt was real, that everything was legitimate. I needed him to confess on tape. I needed him to hang himself. Daniel nodded slowly. You let me keep suffering so you could get evidence. The words hit like a punch. Yes, I admitted, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. But Daniel, if I'd moved too fast, he might have gotten away with it. He might have hurt you or Sophie. I had to be sure. I understand, Daniel said. He was quiet for a moment. It's going to take me a while to process all this. Take all the time you need. But Dad? He looked at me, and I saw my son again, not the broken ghost Richard had created. Thank you for coming back, for not giving up. 2 months later, the legal proceedings were in full swing. Richard Kane faced 47 federal charges. His lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecution wasn't interested. The evidence was too strong, the crimes too severe. Victoria and Brett were also facing charges. The family that had lived in luxury while my son scrubbed floors was being torn apart by the justice system. Daniel and I worked with Hartman to restructure the company. We changed the name back to Chen Technologies. Daniel became CEO, with me as chairman. He was learning fast, discovering he had a talent for leadership that Richard had tried to crush. The mansion in Pacific Heights became Daniel and Sophie's home. I helped them move in, watched Sophie pick out her bedroom, saw Daniel stand in the living room where he'd once worked as a servant. It feels strange, he admitted, being here as the owner. It should feel like home, I said. Because it is. This is where you belong. On the day of Richard's sentencing, Daniel and I sat in the courtroom. Richard looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, all his arrogance gone. The judge read the verdict. 30 years in federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, and theft. Victoria got 15 years. Brett got 10. As they were led away, Richard looked at me one last time. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just looked back, letting him see what I'd become. Not the broken man he'd tried to erase, but the father who'd reclaimed everything. That night, I had dinner with Daniel, Sophie, and some of Daniel's friends. We toasted David's memory, celebrated the future, and for the first time in 12 years, I felt whole. Later, Daniel asked me, was it worth it? The revenge? I thought about the question. It wasn't revenge, I said finally. It was justice. Revenge would have been hurting them just to hurt them. Justice was making sure they faced the consequences of their actions. There's a difference. What's the difference? Revenge is hot. Justice is cold. Revenge makes you like them. Justice makes you free. Sophie fell asleep on the couch, and we covered her with a blanket. I looked at her peaceful face and thought about all the insulin doses she'd nearly missed, all the doctor's appointments delayed, because Richard Kane was stealing from a dead soldier and a sick child. The most important thing I learned, I said to Daniel, is that evil people count on good people being too tired, too afraid, or too broken to fight back. Richard thought he'd beaten you down so much you'd never question anything. He thought you'd just accept his version of reality. I almost did, Daniel admitted. But you didn't. You survived. You protected Sophie. You kept going even when you thought you had no reason to hope. That's not weakness, Daniel. That's strength. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Daniel said, I'm glad you came back. So am I, son. So am I. Outside, San Francisco glittered in the night, full of possibility and second chances. The nightmare was over. The future was waiting. And this time, I wasn't going anywhere.